I tend to date monsters. Or, you are not a monster. You are a werewolf like me. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I grew up watching anything I could find that had werewolves in it. But my favorite show of all time was Teen Wolf. It came on when I was like 11 or 12 and lasted through my teenage years, helping me understand the kind of guys I liked. I decided early on that I was going to date bad boys. And if I could find any real werewolves out there in the world, I would especially want to get with them. The best werewolf on that show, in my opinion, was Liam, the one with anger issues. I thought it was weird that he sort of calmed down and got respectful after he became a werewolf. I kind of am usually on the lookout for a version of Liam that got even angrier after his change. You might say I'm the kind of woman who's up for a challenge. When I first set out to cause trouble in life, I had two best friends who created as many problems as I did. The three of us used to call ourselves werewolves, because that was before we found out werewolves are for real. We used to use that word to describe girls that were out looking for bad boys to burn the world down with. I dated one rich lunatic. I dated a bunch of poor ones. But it all led to the discovery of the underground. What do I mean when I say the underground? I don't know how to describe it. Any adjective used seems trite. The supernatural underground? The cryptid underground? The alien underground? None of them explains what I'm talking about. And they all sound kind of like corny names to me. The underground isn't a thing or a place anyway. It's just a bunch of social connections, really. Business relationships too, I guess. It's a scene, kind of. It's a social class too, sort of. My two compadres, they both became vampires. I mean, they don't use that term, but to me that's what they've become. They serve this master vampire, which they don't call a master vampire. They call him Larry, but he's their master nonetheless. Me? I'm still a free agent. I want to keep having adventures for a while at least. My mother on her deathbed when I was 15 made me swear to her that I wouldn't settle down until I was at least 25 years old. I've still got almost 2 years on that, and I can't break my pact with my mother. She promised she'd haunt me if I did, and I'm really scared of ghosts. I'm not scared of werewolves at all. I love werewolves. But ghosts? I don't even want to think about them. People tell me that's dumb since a ghost probably can't hurt you, but a werewolf can bite your face off. But you know, I tell them at least a werewolf can't fade away or walk through a wall. I mean, if he's alive, and he's a male, then I can probably charm him out of hurting me. But some Casper-looking dude coming back from the afterlife? He don't care about what I say or do. He's been there and done that. When I was a teenager, my only rule for dating was to have fun. As I am now an older, mature lady of 23, I am starting to come up with some dating do's and don'ts. Number 1. Adventure over money. Dating rich guys is nice and usually preferable. In fact, it's better to go with the richer guy about 97 or 98 times out of every 100. But sometimes a poor psychotic or a maniac can give you a much more fun night than even the richest rich dude. So if given a choice of a billionaire landlord who sits home and watches TV, or a completely broke motorcycle riding werewolf on the run from the law, who do we choose, ladies? That's right. We choose the bad boy. At least, if we can cover the price of gassing up his bike, because he probably just spent his last dime on liquor and weed. Rule number 2 is never forget rule number 1, adventure over money. If I'm not narrowly avoiding death 3 or 4 times a week, I need to change of venue, you know what I'm saying? At least, that was what I was like until I met this guy that I'll get to later. He's the first guy I like that's more civilized than I am, but he's a werewolf. I can't explain him, so I have to leave him till later. He makes being nice seem like it's not lame. Let's call him Galahad, because he could have had this gal already if he wasn't so polite. He's the exception to all the rules. But first I want to tell you about some of the more hardcore werewolves I've almost lost my life with. I'm going to start with a werewolf I dated who stole from convenience stores. Let's call him Robbie McRobertson. The first time I went on a date with Robbie, we stopped at a convenience store to get some money and liquor. I thought he was gonna pay, but instead he wolfed out right in the convenience store guy's face, right? Becomes the werewolf right there in the store. The guy's pants get stained dark and his eyes roll back in his head. Then he faints and hits his head, and we hadn't gotten any money yet. The register was locked and we didn't know how to open it, so we left there with nothing but the drinks and some snacks. After that, I suggested we try it a different way that didn't involve fainting. There's that old Linnea Quigley movie. She's one of my idols, Linnea Quigley. She did this thing in that one movie where she wears a short skirt and she bends over to look at magazines on the low shelf, right in front of the guy working the cash register. He can't take his eyes off her merchandise. And meanwhile, her friend loots the store and the clerk never sees it. Or maybe it was two clerks, but you get the idea. So I did the Linnea move on the old Middle Eastern guy working the register, and Robbie filled up a bag with beer and food. And then, when he was ready for us to leave, Robbie brought a little package of like yodels or ding-dings over to the guy, and once the guy opens the register, Robbie wolfs out, and that guy pees himself and faints too. At least we got the money that time. I was sick of paying for our dates myself. I spent a week once with a psychotic werewolf who was driving across the country. That was how I ended up in Wisconsin in the first place. I'm not originally from here, but I've adapted quickly. Call me Linnea Quigley, because it was the monster men around here that caught my attention. The man wolves out here are looking for more long-term insanity from their women than back east. One-night stands and 2-week relationships are over. Some of the wolfmen I met were more clinging than a wet rag. Sure, they try to boss you around, but they can't hide their neediness. I want a guy who doesn't need me, who couldn't care less about me, who could do better than me. Why else would I literally date monsters? The werewolves I met and came to love in Wisconsin were not all living around Milwaukee or going to the underground clubs in that area. Some of them lived in the country and barely socialized at all. I don't know why I saw werewolves as city creatures. They really are more suited to living in the woods. I had always seen the woods as sort of lame before. I mean, it's so freaking quiet there. What could be more boring than quiet, right? And it's like so dirty. I mean, the ground is literally dirt. At least when there's garbage on the ground in the city, you can sweep it up. In the country, it's just like dirt. Good luck sweeping up the dirt when there's just more dirt underneath that dirt. I mean, the country seems completely unnatural and weird to me, because I grew up in Brooklyn. And also another thing I'm learning about the woods and the werewolves that live in these woods here in the Midwest is that they are serious. They don't really joke around, and there are very few attitudes being thrown around that people aren't willing to back up with action. If you're on the scene, any scene, it's like playing poker. A lot of the time you don't need a winning hand to win if you can bluff your opponent and get them to chicken out and back down. It's not the biggest man who wins in New York. It's the smartest and slickest bully and manipulator of people. Not in the woods. In the woods you do see some bluff posturing, you see some bluff charges, but they're done as warnings, not as tricks. There's a difference if you think about it. In Brooklyn, if you could trick people into thinking you were more bad than you were, you could get over on them for a long time afterward. They would do things for you and give things to you if you had them fooled into thinking that you were somebody. In the woods, you can't bluff the same opponent more than once. Then you've got to back it up with action. It's like the difference between living on credit and paying cash money on the spot. The farce counts its change, and you better give it exactly the right amount of it. So then why am I thinking of moving out to live in the boring yet stressful forest? Well, for one thing, I'd be moving into a cabin with a guy that I know is a werewolf. So it's not like I'd be making a wise or smart choice. It's still life-threatening and dangerous, so it's not like I'd be acting mature. I promised my mom I wouldn't act mature till I was 25. No, I think I've definitely found a way to both settle down with a man and place my life in unnecessary and pointless danger. I might have found the best of both worlds. The guy, let's call him Marvelous Marv the Magnificent, is the finest looking man of either variety, human or werewolf, that I have ever seen. Oh no, wait, I already said I was going to call him Galahad earlier, right? He is the be-all and end-all. He is so far out of my league I should have to buy tickets just to see him. I could never do this good again, but he has one big major flaw. He is not evil. I mean, he's good. He's a nice guy. He gives money to homeless people. He holds doors for old ladies. He doesn't even rob convenience stores. There's something wrong with him. He's good even when he could easily get away with being evil. I've never met anyone like him before. I mean, technically he's kind of a goody two-shoes, but he also transforms into the most feral werewolf I've ever seen. He tells me it's not lame to be good, and he sounds like he means it. Of course it's lame to be good, to be obedient to your masters. They don't follow their own rules. They just want us to follow them. Like dogs. That's my problem with this guy. He's like a domesticated dog so much of the time. He stops at stop signs even. Who stops at stop signs? I know a werewolf who slows down when the traffic light turns yellow. Really. He also knows how to cook a lot better than I do. He told me he wants me to move in with him so he can fatten me up. Do you think he wants to fatten me up so he can kill me and eat me? Well, that might be exciting and dangerous, right? But who am I kidding? He's not a cannibal as much as I wish he were. He's a goody two-shoes werewolf. If I stay with him, I might start to become good like he is. I might start giving money to those less fortunate. I might start smiling at neighbors. Who smiles at their neighbors? Galahad smiles not only at neighbors, but he smiles and greets total strangers while walking down the street. Then that night he becomes a werewolf and hunts animals down in the forest, eating them raw after the catch. My Sir Galahad. I do enjoy visiting him, but could I really give up my social life and live in the woods with a guy who doesn't even use foul language? I've searched his computer while he slept and I couldn't even find any porn on it. What kind of guy doesn't store porn on his laptop? My Sir Galahad, that's who. The most boringest, muscle-bound, gorgeous, hulking monster of a werewolf I ever met. The bigger problem with this guy, bigger even than the boring, quiet woods he lives in, is that he gives me this feeling I never had before. He makes me wonder if I'm good enough for him. I usually feel like I'm too good for any guy. This way when we break up I don't even care. With this guy I don't know if I can be good enough to deserve him. And then if we broke up it would actually really hurt. It would confirm that I wasn't good enough for him, and I might never really get over him. That's a terrifying feeling. What if I had to get serious to keep this guy? Having adventures with werewolf trash is exciting, but this guy's more like werewolf nobility. At least he behaves in such noble ways. And he keeps surprising me with how elegant and civilized he can be. Not just for a werewolf, but in general. He's read all these old poetry books and he can remember long passages of the most incredible poems. I don't even like poetry, except when he starts chanting it. And then it sounds amazing. He can say it in this way that's so much more musical than when I say the same words back. Maybe I should break the unwritten rule of life and be honest to this man? I promised my mother I wouldn't settle down till I was 25. If anyone would understand, this goody two-shoes werewolf guy would. Then maybe he'd want to have adventures with me for another 2 years before we got serious. But if I tell him that, he might just dump me and grab some other girl ready to settle down. I might never find a guy like him again. This might be my one chance for storybook happiness. Anyway, my main advice for dating monsters is to not get too serious. And here I am thinking of breaking my own rule. This is the kind of problem I have to deal with because I tend to date monsters. I've seen my werewolf boyfriend transform. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've been dating a guy who works at a county fair and who also happens to be a werewolf. All the girls are hot for him. Not because he's a werewolf, really, but because he looks like Jason Momoa's younger brother or son or something. The first time I met him, he was working one of those booths where you throw the ball and try to get it into the cup or whatever. He gave me one of the dolls just because I kissed him, and I could tell he was a real werewolf. I ran my tongue over his fangs when I kissed him. He didn't even have to tell me that he was a werewolf. I told him. He laughed and said he might be a vampire. They have fangs too. I reminded him that it was daytime and the sun was out. He thought I was stupid, but I know vampires can't work as carnies. They would turn to dust like in the movies. But werewolves, they don't have a problem with sunlight, see? So when I told him that, the werewolf could see right off the bat that I'm smart, and he knew not to mess with my head. I had him figured out inside of 2 seconds. So I started to ask him if he could make me a werewolf too, and he said he could do it, but it would cost a lot of money. I asked why it would cost money, when he educated me that you need tiger's blood in order to make someone else a werewolf. And it's got to be blood from a living tiger, so it has to be drawn out of the great beast a little bit at a time over the course of months. So this carnival Jason Momoa told me I have till the fair comes back to town in the summer to raise $1,000. He said that would give him enough time to draw all the tiger blood we would need for the transformation ceremony, and that the $1,000 would reimburse him for the cost of getting that tiger blood. Don't worry, I know he's not scamming me. I know he's a real werewolf, because he let me see him transform. Well, actually he made me look away, so I didn't actually see the change, but when he let me look again, he had much larger fangs in his mouth than before. I had to look away and then he transformed back to human. I asked why he didn't show me a complete transformation into a complete werewolf, but he educated me about that too. He said that if I had seen him become a full werewolf, he would have to then kill and eat me. And if I got eat, then he wouldn't be able to make me a werewolf this coming summer. He told me that he's changed a number of guys into werewolves before, but I'll be his first female werewolf, so I'm sure this is just as special to him as it is to me, and it's very special to me. I'm not allowed to tell my parents or family or the police about what we're doing, because apparently he says werewolfism is not allowed in our state, or changing people into werewolves is illegal or something. I forget exactly how he put it. Now, I haven't talked to my parents in so long I doubt I'd remember their voices, even though they sleep in the next room over from me. We communicate through Failbook, and all we do is say happy birthday to each other once a year. If I did tell them that I met a guy who looks like Aquaman that's gonna turn me into a werewolf, I doubt they would even look up from their stupid phones anyhow. I'm still a few hundred short of the $1,000 I need to raise, but it will be worth every penny to become a werewolf. And I know it's all real because I've seen my werewolf boyfriend transform. Hey, I just want to say I've been reading this fascinating book about the dogman and werewolves, written by the late Godfrey. It's a real classic on the subject. I've noticed that there are some sharp discrepancies between her version of a certain famous classic dogman appearance in the 20th century and the History Channel's version of the same event. I'm working on a semi-animated episode using maps and imagery to illustrate visually the two different versions as they're explained. Try to get closer to the truth than possibly anyone has ever gotten before. You know you can get the audiobook version of this important book for only $6 if you follow the link in the description, and you help out our channel if you do. And now for something completely hairy. I just had an epiphany. It's time to say thanks again to Tiffany. Please join me in thanking Tiffany Walsh for making this episode possible. Tiffany is a member of our PayPal subscribers club, and she's joined 2 times over. Thank you so much, Tiffany. We really appreciate it, especially in these hard financial times. We have 2 clubs on this channel, one here on YouTube and one via PayPal. Here to tell you about both is our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.